Hi, I am DV LeBron with the Ellis Talker Show. Today, my very special guest is Midlothian City Councilman Mr. Ed Gardner. How are you, sir? Hello?
Hello. Hey, there we are.
There you are. I lost you there for a minute. How
All
you doing
right.
today?
Doing pretty good.
Well,
Busy days.
yeah, it's always busy days, especially right up against early voting coming up here next week.
That's
But
right.
I wanted to tell you, like I've told every candidate this election cycle, thank you for wanting to continue to serve your community in this rough and tumble thing called Ellis County politics. It can be quite interesting, and you continue to want to serve your community. So thank you for that.
I
Um,
appreciate that. Thank you.
and thanks again for coming on the show again. I had you when you were running, and you've had to run and more run. And I think you've been running for 3 years or something. You've
I,
been
I,
running
I feel
straight.
like Forrest Gump, just going back and forth across the country, just running
I was
nonstop.
running.
Yeah, I was running.
So now you're running for reelection, and you're the incumbent, and you've
Yes,
been in
sir.
there a few years, and you've been doing stuff. But there's a lot of new people in the city that may not know you. So can you tell them about you?
Well, I've been in Midlothian for about 20 years. I'm married to my sweetheart from college that I've been with for, I don't know, 30 years. I should probably know that, right?
Yeah, you
35,
should.
30 years.
Yeah.
I've got two beautiful daughters, 14 and 16, were born here and have grown up in the Midlothian ISD schools and are doing wonderful. I'm a veteran. I am a business owner. I spent a lot of time in corporate America working for companies like Hewlett Packard and Nokia and traveling all around the world. And I eventually just decided to hang that up and start my small business here so I could stay home, stay in our town, and I've been doing it ever since. My wife is a eye doctor here in town. Been here since the Walmart was built. That's going back a ways.
Yeah.
And we just love this place. And I decided that now that I have more time, I needed to really get involved and make sure it stays a place that my children will want to grow up in.
Yeah. And there's a lot of change coming.
There
Um,
it is.
so you've been on there. You've been on there for what is it?
One year,
One
actually a
year.
little less than a year.
A
I
little
just
bit
got
less.
elected last May. Was I got elected into place 5, which was vacated by Justin Kaufman, who's now the mayor. So he had 1 year left on his term. He went ahead and stepped out to run for mayor, and that left a vacancy for that last year of his term. And I've been filling that. And now I'm running for my first full term in office. So,
But you've seen some stuff, and you've
oh
seen the
yeah,
budgets
yeah.
last time. There's been a lot of stuff going on. So in general, I wanted to ask you, why do you want to do this?
Mainly just to help the community. I mean, I look around and I see there's a lot of challenges. I see a town that has grown since I've been here from like 6,000 people to 46,000 people. Uh, and I see challenges to the infrastructure. I see taxes that have gotten out of control. It just I felt like it needed somebody with my experience, which is a long history and audit and compliance and finance and computers, computer technology and management, to be able to step in and kind of help get over some of these hurdles that we're facing due to the growth. So, you know, I, that and I must be a little bit crazy because
Just a
of all
little
the
bit.
time that it takes away from the family and takes away from my business. But it's worth it. I just kind of have always felt a need to serve. That's why I'm a veteran. I also am a 25-year Mason. It's just something that, I always look for opportunities to serve wherever I can. So,
And a veteran of the United States Navy, one of the
yes.
best service in the United States. Just
Oh,
saying, just
yeah,
saying.
brother.
Yep, booyah. So, the in the last year that you've been in there, um, talk to me about transparency. What have you done to be transparent to the people of Midlothian?
Well, transparency for me personally, I've always been available. So, my cell phone number, my email address, it's all out there. It's public information. It's on the website of the city, and I answer my phone. I mean, people call me all the time. Somebody has a problem with a drainage issue, or somebody has an issue with cars that are tearing down their street and not stopping at stop signs. it's all kinds of different issues that are small, to broken sidewalks and things like that they've noticed, to much more major things. Like one of the residents in town reached out to me and talked about the fact that we were one of the only cities that around that didn't have a homestead exemption for disabled. We had an exemption amount for seniors, elderly, and for veterans, but we didn't have anything for disabled. So, we're able to get that done along with some of the other, tax saving options. But all that comes from communication. It comes from dialogue with the community. It comes from having my door open and answering my phone and talking to people when they have a problem. And, just sitting down with them and saying, okay, what can we do? How do we fix this? And working through their problems and then figuring out, one, do we already have the systems in place to fix that? Does the city already have the process for these people to work through, or is it something that we've got to go and fix and build? One of the things that came up this last year was somebody came to me with a complaint. They said, how do I complain to city hall? How do I go and talk to them about it? Because there was no formal complaint form. I know it sounds crazy, but there was no way for somebody to go in and actually register a complaint, say, this is the problem I have with City Hall. So, that's been fixed. We have that process in place now. And, it's just driving in a process that makes it easier for the people to interact with the government, right. Making it easier for them to see what's going on and easier for them to be able to change what's going on, frankly.
Yeah.
So
now, Ed, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned being on the council versus running?
One of seven. That's the biggest. So, I mean, no matter how passionate I am about a specific thing, I'm one member of a body of seven, and my vote counts 1/7 of the total. So there's times when you've got to cooperate, and there's times you lose. There's things that I wanted to do. Last year, I'm still in favor of a no new revenue rate. Something I'm passionate about. I don't feel like that it would harm our city whatsoever to try that for a couple of years. With the amount of growth that we have, I think we'd still be growing our government, year over year running that. But I found out really quickly that I was one of seven that was pushing for that. So,
figuring that out, that
was a big surprise coming into office. That just because you want to make something happen doesn't necessarily mean you got to work with your peers to make it happen.
Yeah, you do, especially when it's one of seven, like you're saying, and having and fostering those relationships. How important has accountability been to you? Because there's been things that have been presented to you from the city, and I'm not, there may have been times when you had to kind of question those things. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, accountability is something that I personally always strive for in my life. I mean, when I make a mistake, I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, I made a mistake. I messed up. Or in my business, if our product isn't perfect, I go to the customer and say, hey, I made a mistake. My company made a mistake. How do we fix it? One of the issues I have is that when it comes to, corporations, oftentimes businesses, and especially with government and our different municipal organizations, is that people are afraid to take accountability. They're afraid to say, I made a mistake. And so they don't. And the problem is when you don't take that step to say, we screwed up, we caused the problem, and now we need to fix it. Instead, you make excuses for why that problem exists, and you do everything you can to avoid fixing it, because fixing it is a form of accountability. And so that's something that I desperately want to make sure does not exist in our local government, because it's very hard on the citizens when they go and they can see there's a clear problem and they're told that there's no problem. And that's an issue, and that's something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that there definitely some, when you get gaslighted, I'm not saying that there's any gaslighting saying, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when you, in general, in life, when you get gaslighted, there's nothing that could to take away your Jesus faster. I know me. That's nothing that'll take my. No, it's not happening.
I
When they do
know
that
what you
Jedi,
mean.
it's not. It's a Jedi thing. You know, it's not happening. No, it really isn't.
Yeah, no,
So
it's
yeah,
like, no, I feel it. It's
yeah,
happening to
yeah.
me. I know it's happening. So, yeah.
And I don't like, definitely, but let's dive into the issues. There is, you were part of the last budget process, and during the budget, one of the things the city council does is setting the tax rate, and you had alluded about the no new revenue and stuff. Talk to me about the property taxes in Midlothian. What would you like to do if you're reelected? Where would you like to, first of all, how do you approach them? How have you approached them?
Well, I'll just give you my personal example of taxes. I bought my house, 20 years ago. I bought it on a 30-year fixed mortgage. I've been making the same payments. And, when it started out, my taxes were 15, 20% of, each month. 20 years later, my taxes are now more than my mortgage payment. I'm actually paying a higher tax bill than I pay for my house. So I've gone from buying my house to renting it from the government. And that's a problem. That's wrong. It should not exist. And so, when people tell me that we need higher taxes, we don't. I see people saying, "Oh, we got to have more money. We've got to have more money to do this and to do that." We don't. We just need to spend our money more wisely and to be, have our pencils a little sharper and to keep it focused on what's necessary. One of the things that I looked at was, we were presented a budget, and granted, I had no input to the budget because I was hired I was hired by the people of Midlothian in May to do this job, and I stepped into it after all of the budget talks. The budget had been created, okay, by staff, city staff. It was presented to the council. I mean, a couple weeks after I took office. It was, you talk about, baptism by fire and drinking from a water hose. Here I get this, this budget that's this high slapped on the desk in front of me, and I'm digging through it, and everybody's saying, "Oh yeah, well, what would you cut? What are you going to cut? What are you going to cut? In order to lower taxes." And here's the crazy thing: was that entire budget could have been funded at, I believe, 62 to 63 cents per $100 valuation, and our tax rate was at 65 cents. So our tax rate was already higher than every single wish list that staff had put into that budget. Wow. And rather than cut and just fund the budget that was asked for, we ended up going out and taking a $5 million bond just to offset that revenue that was coming in so that we didn't have to lower the tax rate. That's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. That's the stuff that should not happen. If you don't need it, you shouldn't be taking it. But, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but other people felt like we needed to do some more projects and more growth. We've got a new city hall that's being built. We've got the new, public safety center, and they wanted some stuff to go with it. They wanted to build another park in downtown or expand, the Heritage Park downtown and do some other things. And I'm just like, guys, you're killing people. You're literally driving people out of their homes, and we need to fix that. And if we can give back a couple cents per 100 and lower people's taxes, let's do it.
Yeah.
But here's the funniest part about that is, with valuations going up. So every year, that whether you like it or not, your house becomes more valuable, and so therefore you get taxed more on it. With valuations going up, even if we'd lowered the percentage or lowered the cents per 100, we still would have been gaining more revenue for the city because there's more rooftops and there's more valuation there. So, the valuations went higher. The one thing I was able to do was to work with a couple of my peers and get a homestead exemption passed. And that what that did is essentially, for the 2023 year, it gave a 10% homestead exemption, which kind of froze those valuational increases for that year. And then for 2024, it went to 20%, which freezes it for this year, because generally they can only raise your valuation by about 10% or 10% per year. So what that did is it pretty much offset the increase in taxes. And then, luckily we got some relief on the state level and at the school board level. And so people actually did see their taxes come down. But, looking at things like, if we have a fully funded budget, we definitely should not be taking anything over and above that. Fund your, plan your dive your plan, build your budget, fund your budget, and be done. Right. Don't start reaching for the stars, because the people don't want to pay for it.
So talk to me about the budget. You showed up and they threw this massive budget in front of you.
Yeah.
How did you, and I know that, that was kind of like, it was sort of like set in stone, but how did you approach it? And, how will you approach budgets going forward? Just kind of give the audience kind of how you looked at it.
Well, with that one, we do budget workshops. So the council sits down with staff and we literally go through that budget line by line. Now, granted, most of pretty much everything that was in that budget was for personnel that needed to be hired, equipment that needed to be replaced, the M&O, which is your standard maintenance and operations. But we broke it down and we went through there. Was there some things that we could have cut out of that budget? Yeah, I'm sure we could have definitely sharpened our pencil and found things. I mean, we spend a lot of money on consulting that, having other people outside of the city government validate decisions that are being made by, doing essentially parallel work. So, our engineering guys do a study and they come up with a plan, and then it gets sent out to a consultant that does the plan, and then they compare it and say, okay, we're good. But that costs us, $300,000, $500,000, $70,000 constantly throughout the year. There's places we can save money doing that. We can rely on the experts that we have on our staff and trust them. But part of that is the willingness to take accountability. That issue of being afraid of accountability is what leads to those decisions to hire those outside consulting firms, because then you have a little bit of plausible deniability. You're like, well, they said to do it. so they're able to not have to stand, and face the taxpayer saying, we made a mistake.
Well, the government,
they did,
I've been with the government one way or the other for 28 years or something like that, and I will say that the government can always find a reason to grow. There's always a reason for more money. And some will say because it's a service-based thing and it's got to provide services. So did you see that in the budget, kind of like what government does? They expand.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the thing. It's like, we've got more residents, so we need more personnel to be able to support them. We need to, we got more roads, so we need more equipment. There's always that, we're more people to serve. We need another fire engine. Those needs are there. They're valid. They're not wrong. But some of those decisions, we can figure out ways of, thinking outside the box. One of the discussions that we had was around mowing. And, I brought up, I'm like, we're spending, I can't remember the exact figure, but it was an astronomical amount on paying somebody to mow all the green space that we have in the city. And I'm like, why can't we take this in-house? And I heard of so many different reasons of, then we've got to maintain our equipment. And the big thing that I heard over and over again is, well, if we do it, it's going to cost more. We can't do it for what the private sector does. We can't deliver it that cheaply. And I say, if you can't deliver it that cheaply, you're doing something wrong. You're not operating efficiently, because private sector, you and me, when we go and build a business, we've got to make it cost effective. Mm-hmm. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it cost effectively, because it's coming out of your pocket. The difference is the mentality of it's not coming out of their pocket. It's coming out of our pockets as taxpayers. And they'll say, oh, it's only a penny. It's only, a tenth of a cent. But that adds up. That adds up quickly.
Yeah,
So
it does. What's the biggest challenges going forward with that? Because I know you're working on budgets right now. You're in them. You're starting them, or
we're just starting to talk about it. And that's
starting to talk. Yeah.
That this is where being in office right now is that just my presence on the council has an effect on the decisions that staff makes going forward. Because if you're questioning them, from the dais as to why they're spending money that may not need to be spent, that's an uncomfortable position to be in, to stand there and say, well, I don't really have a good reason. So knowing that I'm going to be there asking those questions, they're making sure that the dollars that are being spent are absolutely necessary. And I mean, for the most part, our staff does a really fabulous job. They work hard. Their heart's in the right place. It's just government itself, just the nature of government is inefficient. And that's something that we can work to fix. We can streamline it, and we can make it more efficient. And so those are the discussions I want to have now. Frankly, I need to know if I'm going to be here next year. But once we get through this election, that's going to be it. I'm going to have the pedal to the metal, and that's what I'm going to be pushing. So how do we make this more affordable, and how do we lower taxes? How do we make this city, affordable to the residents?
So it's growing. There's houses. I got an email the other day from Bridgepoint saying that, hey, after this date, we're going to be raising prices.
Yep.
So there's $600,000+ homes. Now they're beautiful. I'll give them that. But there's $600,000 homes at 7%, and somehow, just somehow, they're selling.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know who has that money, but somebody.
I don't know either.
And they're buying them, and there's people coming.
Yep.
Growth is something that you had, like, since you've been there, you dealt with. It's something we talked about on the last show on how you would deal with it. Being in the council this last year, and how has your approach changed, or what is your approach towards growth?
Well, I've stuck to my guns on the fact that high density is not healthy for our city. Apartment complexes, zero lot line neighborhoods, the more dense that you put housing together, the more people you pack in per acre, the more services that are required per acre, the higher the cost to the city. Generally those higher density neighborhoods require more fire and EMS services and police services. And, frankly, you have more, a lot more traffic on the roads where those neighborhoods dump in. So you have more road maintenance. They're generally not a good bet for the city. The 1 acre neighborhoods that we have, the homesteads that we have are great. For the city, from the tax base standpoint, they're wonderful, because those houses generally don't need a lot of services. They're generally fairly self-sufficient, and they pay a lot in taxes. Like you said, some of these houses that are being built are enormous. There's one just down the street from me that's at least 6 times the size of my house. It's a mansion. It's no doubt about it. And I too wonder, how does somebody afford something like that? But when I got on there, I said, I'm going to fight density, and I have. I'm going to work for business, which means, I've done my best to support local businesses coming in. One of the things that I have probably kind of changed my opinion on a little bit is some of the business developments. I was completely of the mindset that every one of them was evil, and I'm not now. I mean, there's people now that we have all these houses, they need grocery stores. They need to have, places where they can go, and shop locally, and the local business owners need places to be able to start their new businesses. These entrepreneurs need a place. And so the only way we're going to get that is development. And as much as I hate to see it, it's inevitable. It's coming. So, I've changed from no at all costs to let's make sure it's what's best for the community, and working with, the developers to make sure that what they're doing is not going to harm the citizens. Like there's a development that came before the council recently that, my personal concern was that there's a pipeline running under it. I voted no because of it. I mean, there's one of these major gas pipelines running right through the parking lot. I'm not against the development, but I don't think that was a very good idea.
I can see bad things happening.
Yeah, but maybe it'll never happen. Maybe it'll be safe forever. But personally, I felt like it's a risk to the citizens, and we shouldn't be doing it. I look at another development that comes in right near a neighborhood that's been having horrible issues with flooding, and they want to put down, these giant buildings with a lot of concrete. And I'm worried that the water runoff is going to cause more flooding. And so those are the concerns that I'm bringing to development. And I'm saying, let's make sure that what you're doing isn't going to hurt somebody. I mean, I'm all for property rights. I believe that when somebody owns a piece of property, they should be able to do with it what they please. I mean, if you want to start a business in your home, nothing should stand in the way of that. You should be able to do whatever you want in your own home. If somebody wants to sell their property, or build on it or what have you, they should be able to do that. I mean, who are we to tell them what to do? The only thing is I want to make sure that what they're doing doesn't hurt anybody else.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. Now they have like there was talk about this. There's going to be a new Lowe's coming in, a whole new like Lowe's shopping center over there by the fire station, I think. And then they're building a city, Goodland, a city. Like I saw the plan on this. I think one of the board members had posted this about this. It's a city. I mean, only in Texas would they say we're just going to build a city. This good.
Yeah, what you're talking about is not even in Midlothian. That's right on our doorstep. That's what they call it's a municipal utility district is what they call it.
It's a mud. Yeah.
And a mud. Yep. And what it is basically an unincorporated city. It's essentially some developers get together and they work with a state at the state level to get an approval to build a city on a piece of land. They don't have to follow the same rules a city would, and they get to sell bonds, and they go out and basically get this huge, this huge development built. Typically, they get their money out of it, and then they abandon it and say to the city, whatever city it's on the doorstep, hey, you manage this. This is yours now. Yeah. And all of a sudden, now we have to figure out how to keep the roads and the utilities flowing and providing fire and police and all that.
Oh, and the selling point on it was it's MISD schools.
Yes, and that's the other thing is it just we're gonna literally see a double of population due to these muds, and we're not prepared for it. The school district isn't prepared for it. The city isn't prepared for it. And, there's been a lot of discussions at the state and county level of can we stop this and how do we stop it? What can be done about this? But in reality, they're going to happen. It's going to come.
I heard something about PIDs. Like you can work with them to be PIDs. I don't know if I got the acronyms right or whatever. I was talking with Travis Smith in Waxahachie, and he was talking about how the cities are in talks with MUDs about becoming PIDs or something like that, where they end up being a little more accountable. I don't know what that is, but
it's basically, yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is essentially just trying to get them to have more accountability for providing, the services that the neighborhood requires, rather than just building houses, that they're going to have to, put forward their own water. They're going to have to supply, fire and police essentially. And, again, they're building a city on our doorstep.
Yeah. I could keep you on forever, but I do have to eventually wrap. But have we had the problems with STRs? And can you briefly address? I remember there was something going on with the airport. Can you talk about that?
What do you mean STRs?
Short-term rentals. Have we had those issues like Waxahachie has?
It hasn't been a huge problem in Midlothian yet. I know there's been discussions about it. I mean, one of the things that happens in communities where we get higher property values is that a lot of people will, turn their homes over, and they'll move out and they'll turn them into a short-term rentals. But so far it hasn't been a huge issue. Our rental subset is fairly small still. I mean, it's going to come, and we need to have a plan in place for it. We've had discussions on it, and I would expect to see, an ordinance coming down in the next year or so to address it. I know that, I've talked to our lawyer, the city attorney about it and what we're allowed to do, because, that's regulated at the state level. There's, again, private property issues that are out there. And there are a lot of the cities that have put forward ordinances to limit that are in lawsuits. And so kind of what we're doing at this moment is waiting to see how some of those lawsuits turn out. Because, if the cities are found to not be able to sustain, the ordinance, then it's kind of pointless for us to do it just to be sued under the same pretense, and we'll lose, But if they're successful, then we have grounds to move forward to regulate short-term rentals, because realistically, nobody wants to have a party house that's just literally 7 days a week people coming and trashing the neighborhood and partying and throwing beer cans all over, and nobody wants that.
No,
So
we're getting too old for that.
yeah, the whole community is, I haven't talked to anybody who says, oh man, I wish we had a short-term rental next door.
Right.
So, but
So
the airport you brought up, I want to address
yeah.
that one. That we made, as a city, we made a pretty bad decision on that this year, in my personal belief. And that's something, again, that's one of seven. I lost out on the airport. There was a major restructuring to the way that the airport is managed. It's owned by both Waxahachie and Midlothian, so it's a 50-50 split. And it's really languished under that. It hasn't had the opportunity to grow and to change over time, because it's limited by what we can do as a city, because we have to work with Waxahachie. I pushed really hard to get a strong centralized board that can really truly run that airport, can deal with, if they need new hangars, which they've needed new hangars for the last 15 years, they would have the authority to go out and build those hangars. But instead, we did just the opposite. We stripped the board of all power. And now if somebody wants to build hangars, they've got to go through both, Waxahachie and Midlothian. So we've doubled the amount of red tape for anything that's going to happen at that airport. And I have a feeling it's going to kill that airport over time. And I'm very worried about it, because I love that airport. I mean, I took flight lessons there. I soloed there. A big piece of my heart is at that airport. And to see something like that happen just really upsets me, because if we had a better plan for it, that could be a real jewel. That could be something that, we could all be very proud of. It could grow to be something that just really makes, the Midlothian and Waxahachie a true standout, by having a beautiful regional airport that people are proud of.
This area is growing enough that eventually there something like that is even going to be even more and more practical to bring in. Like, Dallas has that business airport off the 20, I think it is. Eventually we're
Dallas
going to get that way. Yeah, Dallas
I mean, it will either end up being like, Dallas Executive, or it'll end up being houses. Because what'll end up happening is, if we're not careful, developers will develop right up to the airport. They'll put houses right up to the property line. All people will come in, they'll buy these houses, and then they'll say, I can't believe it. I've got airplanes flying over my house all the time. And they'll start complaining, and eventually they'll shut the airport down. Yeah. And it's happened. It's happened time and time again throughout the country. The first airport I ever took lessons out of is now just nothing but houses down in Houston, because that's exactly what happened. They allowed development right up to the doorstep. And then the noise complaints to the FAA and to the city ended up shutting that airport down. And it's a tragedy.
It's my secret. I love flying. I absolutely love it. And
so do I.
Unfortunately, Veronica's like, you better get a better insurance policy. So, and not that she loves me, and she might know, she's just like, you better get a better insurance policy.
She's like, just make sure I get a good payout.
Make sure I get a good payout. So this is the part where I shut up and give you the mic and let you talk directly to the people of Midlothian.
Okay. Well, I've only been in office for a year. When I came in, I said, I will work hard for you to lower taxes. I will work hard to make sure that we have accountability. I'll support our first responders. I will push for stronger family values. I've delivered on all of these. The other was fighting growth, which making sure that it's done in a controlled manner that we can sustain. I've done everything I could on every one of those. I worked with my peers to get the homestead exemption that I mentioned, but we also got a homestead increase for the valuations on elderly and disabled, so that instead of $70,000 of having it removed from your valuation, it's now $150,000. So that's really helped our seniors. I spent so much time making sure that what we do in our our government is accountable to the people, making sure that there's transparency. Um, uh, I worked with, I can't tell you how many different residents on their individual issues, working through those. But one of the things I'm the most proud about, and probably there's a lot of people that don't like it, but I'm still extremely proud about, was the turning Midlothian into a sanctuary city for the unborn. I believe that life starts at conception, and now we have an ordinance that prevents an abortion clinic from ever being built in Midlothian, and that's something that, regardless of what happens May 4th, I am proud to have been a part of, and I will hold my head high knowing that I was able to get that done. One of my first things in office was I walked into the city hall and I saw that they had signs up preventing the legal carry of concealed handguns. In a state where anyone can carry a handgun, they were preventing those that have been licensed, trained, and permitted to carry from carrying. Yet somebody without even a license could walk in. I said, this is ridiculous. This is America. It's Texas. And we had those pulled down. So, I'll tell you right now, I will continue to fight for gun rights, for lower taxes. I will continue to fight for family values, and I will continue to push for controlled growth, and at the same time making sure that our infrastructure is maintained and that our first responders are well taken care of. So, that being said, I can't do it without your help, Midlothian. I need you. So come out to the polls. Early voting starts on the 22nd, goes through the 30th, with the election day on May 4th. And I need your vote. So please come out, Midlothian, and help me to continue to fight for you.
There you have it, folks. I got one more candidate for city council that I got to get on there, and he'll be on there soon. And then that is a wrap for this one. But get out there and vote, folks. You get the government you participate in. If you don't participate in the government, you got nothing to say. This is your local government in Texas, and that's something I learned as a transplant. Is that your local government in Texas has a lot to do with your life. There is a lot of influence that local government in Texas has on your life. It isn't like other states. Your ISDs, they have a lot to do with your life and your taxes and your mortgage, and so does the city. So stay on those things.
I want to say one last thing I forgot to mention. I know it's a nonpartisan election, but I am endorsed by both the Ellis County Republican Party and the state of Texas Republican Party. So
that's a big endorsement. Definitely a big endorsement. Well, hey, on top of that, before I close out, folks, I want you to know that we have, for the first time ever on the Ellis Talker Show, we are having a candidate town hall that's going to be moderated with me and Mayor Justin Kaufman. And he's going to help me moderate it because there's going to be a lot, and we're gonna try to keep it at 2 hours because I think that's all StreamYard will give me. But I'm going to have all the candidates for Midlothian City Council on, so you could ask them questions. But you have to send in your questions. You have to be there. You have to be there to ask the questions, send them in, watching. It's going to be live. These guys are coming on live. They've agreed to talk to you and take your questions. And that includes Mr. Ed Gardner. They're all going to be there, and they're all going to take your questions. So please, 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 please be there. Ask questions. This is your government. Please get involved. Ed, thank you so much again for coming on, and I wish you the best in your election.
Thank you for having me, DV.
No problem.